You must be excited about your film coming out. And thanks so much for finding time in your day to talk about it. Let's talk about Hide and Seek. It's an American-made remake of a Korean thriller that came out in 2013. Mm-hmm. Talk a bit about your character and how she fits into this twisted tale, because I think the fans are going to be really excited to see this.
I'm trying to think of what to say without giving too much away.
I know.
She is a denizen of a condemned building in New York City, an immigrant who's come to try and make a better life for herself and her daughter, who encounters a man who's searching for his brother, who he believes is in this derelict building. It turns out that she's a little bit more involved than we would think.
Right, we don't want to spoil anything, obviously. But what drew you to the film and made you want to sign on to the project?
Well, I'm Korean American, so there was that connection right away, in having Korean roots. And horror movies are really fun to make.
They're very hot right now, right?
Yeah, they're really fun to make. It's so enjoyable, and it's really great as a minority woman to be able to play such a pivotal role in this story.
Yeah. Without spoiling anything, though, how did the director, Joel David Moore, describe the character to you to kind of make you want to jump on this project? Again, I don't want you to spoil anything.
Well, one of the things I loved him for was that he really was so invested in this character, and he really wanted to get at what's driving her, what's motivating her. And he really understood that, at her base, she's just someone who really wants to make a good life for her daughter. And she is willing to go really far to do that. And he had so much compassion for that character, and I just loved working with him so much.
What was your audition process like? Did you send in a tape? Did they already have you in mind?
Pre-pandemic days, when I auditioned. So I went into the casting director's office to do the initial tape, and then I got called back and auditioned for Joel, and we clicked. Like, he gave me this note, and something fell into place and was revealed about the character for both of us, I think, in a really cool moment. And then I came back to do chemistry reads with, the girls who were in contention to play my daughter. And that was really fun to meet all these children who were just so different and coming in at such different levels of energy. And I just really loved working with the girl that, they eventually chose to play my daughter. She's just this bright ray of sunlight, and to have that energy in a really heavy, serious, somber kind of an atmosphere was so great. She was wonderful.
The original film, I watched it, obviously. And when you were preparing for the role, did you watch it, or were you a little bit afraid that mimicry would maybe creep into your performance?
I wasn't worried about that. I didn't watch it until after I'd gotten the part, and right before we started shooting, because I was curious about what we were going into. And it's interesting that it's the same material, but it's just attached in such a different way. In Korea, the basis of it is this urban legend about people who live in the walls of, buildings. It's like a urban legend that's been around for decades, for a long time. So they were playing on that. And I think when it's a homogenous society, it's all Koreans, there's certain aspects of race that don't come into play when you reset it in New York. So in New York, it becomes more of an immigrant story of, the people who fall through the cracks of the system in a different way, especially because the focal character is a white man, a very privileged white man. And that contrast is, it just makes it into a different creature in a lot of ways. So I wasn't too worried about the mimicry part.
Well, yeah, you talking about New York. Obviously, it was filmed in New York. It was set in New York. Mm-hmm. And New York has its own problems, sort of marinating in the creeping spread of gentrification. And it creates this housing crisis. And people will do, horrible things maybe to keep a roof over their head. What was it like filming in New York? Did it have some kind of headaches? Because I know when you film in New York, it can be a headache, obviously, with scheduling and filming and all of that. What were the challenges of filming in New York for you, and what were the highlights?
I am a New Yorker. I live here, so it was really great for me, and it was really easy. A location wasn't ever more than, an hour or two by car away, and we got to shoot in some really interesting spaces that I didn't even know existed in the city. So it was like I got to see parts of the city that I wasn't aware of. I live in Manhattan, so I don't see the outskirts of the city so much. And it was really cool, all the spaces that we got to see. So I love it. It's true. Like, I think anytime you shoot in New York, the old saw is that New York is a character. And it felt
in itself, it's always a character in the background of any movie you film in.
Yeah.
With Squid Game and Parasite dominating streaming right now, and it's so popular, what would you say sets this one apart from the original? You mentioned that there's the immigrant factor in this one versus what was in the original. But what would fans who really connected with the first one love about this new remake?
I think when you recontextualize a story, it reveals new anxieties and new, or just casts them in a slightly different way. So you can think of the original a little bit, with a different kind of an illumination, and vice versa. They'll be in conversation with each other in a different way, and maybe different aspects will impact you, from, if you think about the first one after having seen the remake, the American remake. I have not seen Squid Game, so full disclosure.
Oh my gosh.
I know. My dad, who is not like a big watcher of these trendy shows, was like, you gotta watch it. So
you do have to watch it.
It is on the list. And I think overall, what I've always appreciated about Korean art is that they're willing to go for it and embrace the weirdness in a way that I think is not always here in America. So I love that this embrace of things without necessarily having to explain them. Like, they just are, and they just throw themselves full-heartedly into these things that don't always need to be explained. And I kind of really appreciate and love that.
I think that's my favorite part of Korean horror and thriller is they're full throttle all the way. They tell the full story, and they don't kind of care to hit the brakes and wonder what do people think about this. They're going for it. It's always so entertaining. I don't want to spoil, again, your character, but you did work a lot with Jonathan Rhys-Meyers. What was it like preparing for those scenes? Was there some training involved? Anything like that? For you, obviously.
For me, well, I come from a theater background, so I'm heavy background in theater, off-Broadway, new works. So such a big role in a film was a new experience for me, and he's been doing it since he's a teenager. So I just found it so fascinating to watch him and to talk to him about how he came up in it. And he's a complete professional. He's, he's aware of all the little things that took me a minute to think. Like, he was always in a rush whenever we had a child on set, and I'm like, oh right, we only have a limited amount of time with her. He's ready to make the most of it as much as possible, and he has that level of experience. And he was really kind and lovely on set. He's so kind to the children, which I think says a lot about a person.
I think that's something that people don't realize when you have a child on set. It kind of changes the dynamic. Things have to move faster. Things have to get shot quickly because they only have a certain amount of time. That's something that I think fans would find interesting. So talk about your stage work. Obviously, now that theater is kind of waking up from this pandemic coma, are you looking forward to possibly hitting the stage again? Maybe something that the fans can check out?
Theater is my first love. It's how I fell in love with acting. I love the communal aspect of it. I am really enjoying kind of learning, being on this new track of, on camera work and learning about it. And working on a small film, it has a lot of parallels to working on a play. You have this group that comes together for a brief, like intense period of time, and you make this thing, and then you go your own ways, but you always have that, you know, in the background, and you hope that, you know, you'll come together again in some other way, shape, or form. And I really love that parallel about it. I think I love the community of trying to make something together a lot. So yeah, anything that's about community, I'm into it right now.
You're into it. Well, do you have any other projects in the works that the fans can keep an eye out for?
This is a big one. This is a big one, I would say.
Well, I feel like after the fans see this, and hopefully they go to the theater to watch it, after the fans see it, I think you're going to have a lot more options opening up for you. I'm really looking forward to hearing the fans' reactions. What would you like to say to the fans that you are definitely going to make when they see this film?
Well, wait, what would I like to?
Yeah, what would you like to say to the fans that you are going to make after they see this film?
Thank you. Thank you for being into the ride of this movie that I think Joel does the same thing. Like he attaches to that. Not everything is logically thought out. Not everything is deliberate, but you know, it's a kind of a fever dream. It doesn't always make sense, but it comes together to make a feeling. And I'm thank you for taking that ride.
Well, I think they're going to. I know I love the original. I can't wait to rewatch this. I think the fans are really in for a spectacular and twisty ride.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear you say that. Thank you. I only watched it for the first time last night, so I'm really last night. No, this morning. I woke up and it was the first thing I did this morning because I hadn't seen it yet.
Oh, that's great. So you didn't watch anything in the dailies or anything like that? You just waited for everything to.
No, he showed me a sizzle reel back when we were making it, but that was a while ago. That was a couple, 2.5, 3 years ago. So
yeah, because you did it before the pandemic, right? And you had that long break. Did you have to go back and do sort of reshoots or anything like that? Any kind of ADR during the pandemic, or was that?
It was all done before pandemic. Yeah, I think. Yeah. So we got to see each other in person, and I loved going back to do ADR and seeing people again. I really genuinely love this crew of people and everyone in it. So